the attitude towards technology is lean back, let something mature, and then we'll use it once we trust it. That's not the world we live in today. The world we live in today has continuous disruptions. If you look at the news on any day, you will see some new disruption coming through from the economy, from competitive positioning, from market changes, from user tastes, from talent demands, etc. There's a whole host of them. But the thing that I have seen most that has caused the most disruption and is accelerating that disruption because it's affecting all those things I just mentioned is emerging technology.
Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining us here today at Leaders Uncut. It's so great to have you here. And today, oh my God, I am so excited to have with us Sarah Marshall, who is the founder and CEO of Operations Architect. Hello, Sarah. How are you doing today?
Good morning. It's good to talk to you today.
I know. I'm so excited. So why don't we start there, Sarah? If you can just give us a little bit of a background. You are really the operations expert, and you've done so much in your life that really showcase your expertise in operations. So can you give us a little bit of information on your background, where you worked, and who you are?
Love to. I have over 30 years of experience in the fields of technology. I started out in chemical industry, migrated into biotech, and eventually into the high-tech world of first data center, big iron hardware, and then consumer electronic peripherals. I spent some time as a consultant working in fabs, et cetera, and then eventually in software at Google. So I've had a very broad flavor of technology and innovation, and I've had the opportunity to work for some of the most progressive, innovative companies in the world, and I've been trained in that effort in terms of how to not just develop operations, but to develop operations that are highly valuable, flexible, not too overbuilt, not too underbuilt, and I've gained a passion for optimization.
And that's so critical because, my God, clutter happens so easily and so fast in any enterprise. And sometimes we don't even realize it until we have an expert like you that is pinpointing areas of the systems that are not fully functioning and where we could save, obviously, a lot of money and increase our productivity. So it's critical. So, of course, I'm going to ask you, why did you start Operations Architect?
Yeah, after so many years in large companies, and I've led some small ones, but I've spent most of my career in large ones. I wanted to take that sophisticated expertise that's been applied at a high cost and a high value in those organizations and make it available to small companies and medium-sized companies that won't necessarily have access to that kind of expertise. So I'm very excited about taking those sophisticated ideas and instruments and applying them to organizations that may not have had the capacity to or the ability to get them in the past.
Yeah, and so many are exactly in that type of position, thinking it's completely out of reach and they can't afford anyone like you. But obviously, this is not the case, and this is what you are offering right now. What is the vision behind Operations Architect?
Yeah, so I kind of hinted at it in my last answer. It really is translating those sophisticated ideas to get them into smaller and medium-sized companies. The idea being that, as you indicated, as we operate, we organically create kind of a mess. Yeah. We either fix problems of the past and the fixes are no longer relevant, or we overbuild and then we have not enough flexibility, or we underbuild and we have chaos in our companies. What I love to bring to the mix is clarifying that and making it easy for people to understand it. I'm a systems thinker, so I start really broad, and then I take that broad thinking into focused problem solving and solutions.
Yeah, and that takes a specific personality with very specific skills, right? I mean, this is something that not everybody can do.
Well, it's interesting. I've worked with some amazing folks out in the world, but people that are strategists have a particular skill set that is very different than people that are executors. And those people don't talk very well together. They don't understand each other. Historically, what we've done is we've used senior leadership executives to make that translation, but they're not experts at it either. So what I bring to the mix is a structure that does it for the team. It translates those big ideas into executable activities, and it takes away that burden of translation from any one individual.
Yes, and of course, any organization has untapped potential, and that's what you've been trained for, right? To unveil that untapped potential and how to structure it in a way that can really modify the structure and the overall success of the organization.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of big consultant firms, the big four, et cetera. I've never seen anybody put together an end-to-end framework that takes somebody through the entire process of that translation and building out that value proposition. And I think that's because they specialize in their specific areas. What I'm providing is the framework that you can tack those experts into and make sure that nothing's lost in the handoffs.
Yeah, that's important. So I know you believe in what you call parsimonious structure, right?
Yes.
Can you talk about this?
Yes. So people that are in operations tend to just love process. So they will try to build process for anything. People that are not process oriented, like sales folks or visionary executives, tend to stay away from process. I'm in the middle. I am an operations person, so an operations person always has to deal with process and structure and infrastructure. However, I believe that you have to look at what you need. You start out as a startup with a complete flexibility. And then as you grow and mature and your priorities become diverse, you put more and more structure in an organization. But the thing that you want to hold on to is as much flexibility as possible, because that allows you to pivot, that allows you to look at different options. And if you don't have that flexibility, if you have it all built into a platform, you're stuck. You can't move. So as a company matures, you want to start bringing in structure in a very light way. So starting with practices. You call them best practices. They're not required, but they're good ideas and they're a good way to operate. And that gives a little bit of structure without taking away flexibility. If you need more, then you bring in the principles of governance. So you might bring in some policies that you want to hold, and those policies are more rigid. So you're a little bit more process. You still have a lot of latitude. Eventually, you'll run into having to do repeatable actions, like doing expense reports are the same across the company, no matter who you are or where you work. Doing financial reporting tends to be the same way. It tends to be the same thing. Doing supply chain work tends to have a very rigid structure. So you start to build processes, but right now you haven't built anything into an infrastructure. So when you build out into the infrastructure, because undoubtedly you'll have to, Salesforce, Oracle, any SAP, all those big companies are predicated on building structure into the sales operations, into the financial operations, et cetera, and they're necessary. But you want to choose the things that you build into the infrastructure, and you want to choose the things that you hold back so that you can still maintain the flexibility you need to. Perfect example is most of the business operations work I do, it doesn't lend itself to being structured. So when I'm building out a process, I look at it in terms of how do we keep it very flexible so that it can be used in any way that the leadership team needs. But what can be automated so that it's less lifting. The most obvious thing that folks tend to automate is KPIs, because you want to have a continuous feed. You all want them always fresh. You want to be able to do some analysis on them. So if you can automate those processes, then you have a win. But you selectively choose what you're going to automate.
Yeah, well, it is obvious as I'm listening to you that you are really passionate about all of this, which I am not. And my God, thank God for people like you, right, to have this passion and this obsession for engineering and operations. It's amazing. So obviously your background is helping you, because I believe you have a BS in chemical engineering, you also have an MBA, and really your background has helped you shape your perspective and make you the expert you are today, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So starting in engineering, of course, you have a lot of structure, and the main thing that I learned from engineering, I obviously don't apply chemical engineering to my current activities, but what I did learn from my education and my early years developing myself as an engineer is breaking down problems into the pieces that you can solve. And so being able to take a really hairy, big contextual problem and turn it into some bite-sized chunks that we can do something with very quickly is a critical part of it. What the MBA did is gave me the fluency in the languages of all business functions. So what I've done is I've married that idea of breaking down problems, structuring what I need to, not structuring what I don't need to, and married it with my understanding of business functions, strategy, and the larger arc of running a business, and married that into this optimization capability.
Yeah, and of course, obviously, having the experience you've had in those large organizations is also critical, because, my God, there's a huge difference between someone who's just getting out of school with all these diplomas, all these credentials, and someone like you who has actually been in the trenches, right? Because this is how you learn the most, right? I mean, that is, to me, critical when you get help in that type of sector. You have to have experience.
Yes, absolutely. And I have to know where I'm very familiar with various technologies to a certain degree, but I know that there is a place where I have to draw a line and say, okay, I'm not an expert in this kind of software development. I'm not an expert in this kind of financial management. And so I need to tie into those that do have that and depend on them for their expertise as well.
Yeah. And with all of that, you have created a very comprehensive and very pragmatic toolkit for driving performance. I would love you to explain how this works.
Sure. So I've developed this framework that I call the value delivery spine, and it starts with vision and it translates it all the way into operational capability. And there is a number of phases that we go through. And then there's some mechanisms you put in place, PMO with portfolio management for execution, strategy and ops function for dealing with translating that vision into something that we can take action on. But I've tried to make this simple because typically leaders don't think of their problems in those terms. They don't think of, I have this end-to-end problem and I'm not delivering whatever. They usually say, I'm having a hard time putting together my strategy. My execution is not delivering the value that I want it to. My leadership team is not well supported or aligned to the strategic activities that we're trying to accomplish. Or we have all these disruptions coming in. How do we manage those disruptions? So I've developed a set of tools to focus in those areas. While I have a lot of broad concepts and stuff that I bring to bear, I focus them into those meaningful tools so that we can do a narrow assessment, identify the things that need to be resolved, and fix them quickly.
And that's important because it can feel very overwhelming sometimes when you have all that you have to do, you're aware of it, yet you don't know where to start. But when you have tools like what you have developed that are really simple to implement, it's a game changer.
It is. And it's important for when somebody engages me that they understand I'm not going to confuse them with all the lofty concepts that run around in my head. I'm going to be talking practically in terms of stuff that has worked for me in the past and dealing with known problems and known challenges that we're going to have to work through and helping guide the leadership team through those challenges.
And that's important, especially in time of disruptions like we are experiencing right now. Not only we have AI coming at the speed of light, we have all these new emerging techs that are also here for us to utilize. We don't know where to start. And then we live in an economy that's a little bit challenging. So with that, it's important to have frameworks that you can use to really address those organizational disruption, right?
Yes, and we are seeing, and since I started my career when I was young, there would be problems, there would be disruptions, and there were usually came one at a time or maybe two at a time, and then we would solve them over time. And the attitude towards technology is lean back, let something mature, and then we'll use it once we trust it. That's not the world we live in today. The world we live in today has continuous disruptions. If you look at the news on any day, you will see some new disruption coming through from the economy, from competitive positioning, from market changes, from user tastes, from talent demands, etc. There's a whole host of them, but the thing that I have seen most that has caused the most disruption and is accelerating that disruption because it's affecting all those things I just mentioned is emerging technology. Yeah. And emerging technology is driving a lot of that because it's changing the way we live and work. And so it's changing user tastes and trends. It's changing the way we do marketing. It's changing the way we manage supply chains. So we have to be on top of that emerging technology all the time, or we're always on our back foot.
And that's so very true. And this is why when we have someone like you can really help streamline and help implement some of those technologies that may be critical, but you don't need to use everything. That's something that people need to understand, right? I'm sure you're dealing with this on a consistent basis.
That's correct. I mean, the most obvious one we can talk about today is the large language models a la ChatGPT, because it's the guest star of emerging technology that's really changing the way we work. But there are lots of them out there that have been developed over the last several decades. And my position on this is there's several well springs causing this emerging technology to come out. So when I say emerging technology, I'm not talking about stuff that is just dropping out from the ether and showing up. I'm talking about things that are evolving out of these well springs, which include generative AI, and we're seeing that right now, though AI has been around in the form of machine learning for a long time. That we have the Internet of Things, we have blockchain, we have robotic process automation, which automates repetitive activities. We have cloud computing, which enables all the technology that we're working on now. Big data analytics to scoop up all these big volumes of data and do analytics with them, which ushers in the large language models. It feeds the large language models. There's 5G networking and edge computing, which is enabling low latency ability to surf the web from all over the world, which if you've ever been in a place where the internet is difficult, you can wait for a long time. But 5G and edge computing is making that seem more like it's all in the same place. Zero trust cybersecurity. Large language models have both the beauty of being able to build better cybersecurity technology. They also are causing more problems. So you get both sides. And then finally, there is web development, which is, it started out that web was one thing centralized in one place. Web 2.0 decentralized that to big organizations. Web 3.0 is going to decentralize. Every one of us can have our own cloud.
Yeah.
So all of that is coming. Or is here and all available, and we have to, and all of those separately cause changes, but they work together.
So that's critical to understand. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I hear that so often. It's, all these new technologies are not here to just to disrupt. They are here to help us get to the next level. And just like the internet did, right? It's really having that mentality, that approach, that it is taking us to the next level. And you have no choice but going to that next level, don't you?
Yeah, well, if you're in the business world, if you're not on top of technology, you will have a competitive disadvantage at some point. So staying on top of it is necessary. That's why we can no longer stand back and wait for it to mature. We have to be on top of it right now, because the business world is democratizing. You can get your competitors can be in far-flung places and deliver unique things from those far-flung places that everybody wants.
Yep.
So you have to be on top of the technology in order to be on your A game.
And now is the time. I tell everyone, don't think you have all the time in the world. You don't. Things are happening so fast now that if you don't get on the train right now, the train will go at the speed of 1,000 miles per hour very soon, and you won't be able to jump on it. So now is the time.
So true, so true. And that's kind of the thesis of my work is we're in a world of continuous disruption.
Yep.
And instead of fighting that, instead of trying to put up a moat and trying to stave it off, we need to embrace it and learn how to thrive in that disruption.
And that's a great segue to the tools that you have on your website. You are making so much information available to just anyone who visits your website, right? So why don't you speak about this quickly?
Yeah, so there's plenty of content on the website that kind of addresses all the things that I've been talking about, but there are 4 tools that I've established that help diagnose and provide solutioning for those big areas that I talked about earlier. So Inside Ops helps translate that strategy into actionable objectives and get them ready to go do something.
Okay.
Clarity Map is about taking those objectives and translating them into a set of efforts that are prioritized and valued to deliver against those strategic objectives.
Okay.
Leadership is a diagnostic tool to see how well your leadership is aligned to your strategy and your strategic objectives, and then provides a set of actions that you can take to better structure your organization to support your leadership in delivering on those commitments. And then finally, there's FlowGuard, which looks at the disruption that's coming at you, especially in terms of these emerging technologies, and how to assess them, evaluate them at the lowest possible cost, and then make choices about which ones you apply and when you apply them.
This is great. And what I love is they're all summarized in one page. So people sometimes are afraid, oh my God, I'm going to have to read a book to figure it out. But you don't. It's all well done and summarized in one page to explain the structure and the process and how you would be able to work with the executive team to implement those tools that are critical in times of disruption and going forward in managing a company efficiently.
That's right. And in my engagements can scope out as narrow or as broad as an organization needs. If they just want my guidance and counsel, I can provide that. If they want me to come in and get my hands dirty and build it all out and run it for them, I can do that as well.
And that's another great segue to your typical engagement. Can you talk about the process? How does that look like?
Yeah, so when a leader is looking for support, let's just take an example. Let's say that they are struggling with getting their strategy buttoned down and making sure that it's fresh and that it's translatable into something that they can go do. They would bring me in, and the first thing we would do is scope it out. What is the problem you're trying to solve? What are the criteria for engagement? Who am I able to talk to? And then I structure out a clear plan so they will know what they're getting, what the deliverables are, what the engagement's going to look like, and how long it's going to take. So that's all just front-end planning with the leader that I'm working with. Then we go into, once we've developed out the scope, then and we have an agreement that I'm going to move forward, then I go out, do an assessment, understand the organization in detail, the problems, the various perspectives around it, doing what I call paint the elephant. In other words, everybody knows a piece of that elephant. Somebody understands the trunk, somebody understands the tail, somebody understands the ears. What I try to do is paint the whole picture, make sure everybody's in alignment around that picture, and then develop solutions around that common understanding. Once we get an agreement on that, then I build it out. And because these structures I know them well and I know how they work and I know where they don't work, I can usually build them out relatively quickly in weeks.
Okay.
Once it's fully developed, we have an agreement about how we're going to deploy it and what roles people are going to play, et cetera. Then we roll it out. Now, a lot of the work that I do then has a back end, what I call a performance piece, which requires some level of engagement to ensure that we get through a strategic planning cycle, or we get through a full review cycle, et cetera, et cetera. And I can be available anywhere from part-time to full-time to be engaged in that process as well, depending on what the organization needs.
Okay.
And then finally, once we've proven out the process and the process is working the way we designed it, then I sunset out of the active work and become available for support. Okay. So somebody may have an issue problem and they need some problem solving around a particular issue, or they may have questions and need guidance. I will be available on call for that as well. So those are big phases.
Now, that's important to understand that. Now, can you talk about your ideal clients? Who are they?
My ideal clients are small and medium-sized companies that they've come to a point where they need to shift gears. Mm-hmm. For startups, it's going to be somewhere in its late stages. It'll pre-IPO, but they have grown enough that I won't say they have maturity in the organization, but they have a good idea of what their client base is, what their products are, at least their initial product set, and how they're going to engage and deliver on that and capture revenue. For those organizations, they are starting to get complex enough that they need structure, and then I can come in and show them how to do that, build it out. For small and medium-sized companies, it's typically one of two things is happening. For a smaller company, they're in high growth mode and they've outgrown their infrastructure. So they need some support in helping building out that infrastructure. And that can also happen to medium-sized businesses. But typically what medium-sized businesses deal with is they have a mature product set, they have a mature client base, and they're expanding or they're bringing in new product sets. Yeah. And the complexity of that is overwhelming their systems. So they need to go through a transformation to build out to support their evolving needs. Yeah. So any of those areas are places that I love to jump into and provide some optimization.
That sounds great. Now everybody, I'm sure, is asking, wow, great. We know Sarah can do the work. We know she has the background, the expertise to help us out, reach our goals and overcome our challenges. Now, how long does it take to start seeing results?
Yeah, great question. And those moments of truth that you're looking for come in two forms. The first one is as soon as we do a build, regardless of what area we do the build in, you should see immediate results in taking pressure and clarity of what you're going to get and what it's going to look like and the work to be done to get it. The work should be less because we've taken all of the fat out of the system. We've stripped out anything that we don't need to be doing, and we're only doing what we have to be doing. And we're using structures that are lightweight, so they don't require a huge amount of engagement. Typically, when you're pulling information from an organization, you're making people stop doing what they do in order to report out. So you want to make sure two things are happening. One is you're not using too much of their time to do it. You're using the least amount of time to do it. And the value of the delivery of the information is the highest value you can get.
Yes, for sure. I can see that. Yeah. So, I mean, that's great because, it can happen relatively fast, which is important for people to understand. It's not going to take years, right, to start seeing results.
It'll take weeks.
It's right, weeks, yeah.
The second moment of truth is the results of that work. So that could be a refreshed strategy, or it could be a set of efforts that are strategically aligned to your strategic objectives. It could be a new set of cultural values that support your organization in a better way. And when those things are in place, when you finish your cycle in building your strategy, or you're done with a monitoring review, you'll see the results in that you should have much more clarity. You should have a good foundation of knowledge and information to make decisions from, and you feel like you have your arms much better around the complexities of your business.
True, but there's also, I think it also takes specific traits for leaders to have when they have to evolve in a very disruptive world. And I know you're really good at that too, really helping those leaders maybe modify slightly some of their habits, or maybe change some of their behaviors and value. I would love you to just touch on that quickly.
Yeah, it's a great point. If I were to, I mean, there's a lot of traits that leaders need to have, and they are evolved differently by industry and by function, et cetera, et cetera. But there's some common traits that I think leaders that are trying to thrive in a disruptive world need to have. The first is modeling. They need to model the values. They need to model the behaviors that they're looking for. And the reason for that is that you need your organization to operate as a single organization, or a single organism working towards its purpose. Now, they're going to be working at it from different directions. Engineers are going to be delivering products. Financial people are going to be delivering financial management excellence. Sales folks are going to deliver revenue capture. But you're going to have strategic objectives in all those areas. So you want your leaders to all understand the purpose that they're driving towards and model the behavior that the team should be providing in order to chase those things that we're going after. The second is that you want your leaders to be empowering leadership within the organization. So ideally you would have everybody in the organization down to the individual contributor providing leadership. And what I mean by that is they're identifying things that need to be resolved. They're owning their problems. They're going after them. They reach out for collaboration and help when they need to, but they are driving towards the purpose. So empowering the organization is another critical piece. And the last piece is something that every leader struggles with, and that's being able to understand enough of a foundation in order to make decisions well every time they make a decision. So maintaining what you could call a SWOT in your head at all times of the strengths and weaknesses you have in the organization, and the opportunities and threats that you have against the things that you're trying to accomplish, and how you're going to navigate those. And if you have that fresh understanding, of evergreen understanding of that SWOT, you're going to make better decisions. So those are the three big things that I think leaders need to have under their belt.
Yeah, I mean, that's important, right? To have that right mindset and understand what they should be focusing on themselves too, as part of the overall initiative. So having said that, what do you think, where should startup founders start with operations? Because it's a major challenge for most startups, and I have worked with many of them, but I always see that same challenge. Right? Early stage startups, we're not sure where to focus because there's so much going on.
Yeah, that's a great question. And having led a startup, I'm really clear about this. There are three things that a startup needs to be concerned about, and they should ideally not be concerned about much else than this. One is the innovation they're delivering, the product that they are getting out into the world. That's where they start, right? I have this product, I want to get it out in the world. The second is the users, the clients, the customers that are going to use it, because they're the one that are going to determine whether that's really wanted in the world, and they're the ones that are going to purchase it. And so the third piece is capturing that revenue and getting it in the door so that you can fund yourself to move forward. It's actually to build any structure beyond that, supporting those three things, can be not only a waste of time and a waste of resources, it could actually get in the way of being able to pivot, because startups are all about discovery. They'll come in with a good idea. They'll think that it's going to work this way. They think they're going to have this customer base. And as soon as they hit reality, the customer base may be very different. The usage cases may be very different. The product may need to adjust to that, et cetera, et cetera. So a startup is in a constant discovery process and needs to be able to pivot in an instant. The team needs to be able in a day to turn in a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I have seen that myself. You have to be hyper flexible. You have to be able to pivot very quickly and really only institutionalize what's necessary, right?
That's right. And I, as an operations person, will say, don't use the stuff that I'm going to build out for people until you need it, because you'll be wasting your time and effort and potentially endangering your business by doing so.
Yeah, but you have to have that in your pockets to be ready to implement too, right?
And when they're ready for it, I'll be there ready to help them.
Yes. Oh my God. I mean, it's so fascinating, all this world of, I mean, it really takes specific skills. This is what I'm learning when Isham, I listen to you, because it's that that focus that is critical into knowing exactly where to start and then where to progress and what tools to use and how to pivot and why pivot in certain cases and how to react to certain types of disruption. I mean, it's a whole skill set of specific qualities that you have to have in order to tackle operations.
That's exactly right. And typically with startups, your team is utility players. Everybody does a bit of everything because you just can't afford it not to be that way. Yeah. So you have to be, by nature in startups, willing to live outside your lane, support each other in things that you're trying to accomplish, and work as a common organism to deliver towards a pretty focused objective. Whereas larger companies get complex and they start to specialize. You have experts working in silos, et cetera. And then there's a whole different set of issues to deal with then.
Yes, yeah, it's fascinating. And I know you've talked about all these, the new emerging technologies too, that are also something to consider, obviously, in your strategy.
Yeah, that's right. And when I first started looking at emerging technologies, my going in assumption was, well, this kind of technology will specialize in this arena, and that sort of technology will specialize in that arena. And that doesn't happen to be the case. These technologies have something to offer every function in an organization. But the trick is you have to figure out whether what they're offering gives you the value you need to get in order to give you competitive advantage in that arena.
No, very true, very true. Well, thank you, Sarah. That was just an amazing overview on what you do, your specialty, your expertise, everything that you can bring to startups, small and medium-sized businesses. That is so critical. And you know, when sometimes I hear people, "Oh, I can't afford this," and my answer is, "Well, can you afford to fail?" Seriously.
That's right. That's right. Can you afford not to look at the panorama of what's coming at you and not plan for it?
And you have to, because I don't see that as a cost, it's an investment, and it's a necessary investment in times of change like we are going through right now. But I see so many people, so many leaders stubborn, say, you know, what we've done has always worked, it will always work. No, wrong answer. Doesn't work anymore. You can't think that way anymore. I really believe that those people that are proactive, that are intelligent, that are smart, understanding this world with those new technologies, these are the ones that will now take the leap and hire someone like you to create an edge right now. Right now is when you have to create an edge. You don't have the time.
That's right. And my job is to keep you on that edge.
That's exactly what it is. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was wonderful. So one last time I'd like to ask you, and maybe you're not ready for this, but a lot of my guests are not ready for this, but I'd love to know and maybe give us an example of something you had to overcome in your life, that you have something you have learned from, something positive, inspirational, motivational that you can share with my audience. What would that be?
I have moved from industry to industry, obviously. I've talked about all the technologies I've been involved with. And one of the things that I've had to do is very quickly come up to speed in that technology and that environment, doing business in the way that organization does business with the values that they have. So the thing that I have leaned on hardest, because I'm never going to be an expert in everything, is that I need to depend on the folks around me. So I am extremely collaborative for many reasons. One is I love to be a contribution to others, and I want them to know that they can depend on me. But also, in that collaboration, every good idea that I come up with is made great in the cauldron of critique and shaping it to the right circumstance, the right functional situation, the right culture, the right leadership style, etc. So I'm highly dependent on others to make the work that I do great, because it's only going to be great when the folks that I work with are able to engage it in a way that makes their life better. So that's my thinking every time I build out anything is, how is this going to impact others, and how is their day-to-day existence going to improve or not improve, et cetera, by virtue of what I'm delivering to them.
Yeah, and that's beautiful, because I think it's the right reason, it's the right purpose. When you do something to help others, I truly believe that you generate energy, and you gather all the resources and the tools that you need to be successful. So it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate your taking the time to speak with me today. And so if someone wants to get hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Go to my website, www.operations-architect.com, and you'll find all my contact information and all my tools, etc., on that site.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Everyone else, thank you for watching. I really encourage you to share this video with your network, because we live in a time now where companies, small, medium-sized, big companies, they all need some type of guidance to really elevate themselves to navigate this new challenging world that we're all living in. And when we have someone by our side like Sarah, it makes the whole thing so much easier. It gives you the tool, it gives us the tool to implement easily and fast what we truly need, and help us stay focused on our vision, stay focused on what matters the most. And when you're so much in your business yourself, it's really hard to have that clarity. I know I am in branding. It's the same thing. I work a lot with companies that, they communicate things that are not relevant. It's the same with operations. If you don't focus on the right thing, you're going to waste so much time and money, and you will not be able to surpass your competition. You won't be able to achieve the results that you need fast. This is where someone like Sarah comes in and plays a critical role in achieving those results faster than normal, in being by your side when you don't know how to tackle one challenge. You have that perspective and that expertise that is a game changer. So I would highly encourage, first of all, that you share this video, but take the time to speak with Sarah. She doesn't charge anything for a first consultation, and you may discover things that you may have never thought of that will open doors to you, and will also make you realize certain weaknesses that you didn't have, and also discover strengths that you didn't have either that you can leverage. So I highly encourage you to take that first step on connecting with her, speaking with her. And not only she is absolutely incredible with her experience, she knows what she's talking about, she understands the operations world very well, but she's amazing to work with, and she's a beautiful soul, the kindest person I have ever met in my life. I love her so much. I encourage you to get to know her, because it will change your life like she has impacted my life. I'm becoming emotional when I speak about this, but this is so true. Sarah is the type of person that's going to change your life. So talk to her, get to know her. Again, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Sarah.
Thank
please, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me continue doing what I'm doing. And we will see you next time.